You are welcome to today's lecture, everyone. STI 321 Biology in Integrated Science. Today, we shall start by looking at terrestrial habitats. Terrestrial habitat simply means habitat that is predominantly found on land, that is, land being used as a place of abode for most organisms. It has various ranges, that is, different ones, different habitats on the land, such as caves, deserts, shorelines, forests, and that's why they have been classified into four different types. These are forests, deserts, mountain, and grasslands. Let's start with a forest. Forest covers a wider part of the earth. That is, a wider part of the earth's surface is covered with forest, and forest is essential for existence of life because it supports habitat for a wide range of plants and animals. It has different types of plants surviving on the land on land, and that is why it can support existence of so many lives. It is divided into tropical forest, temperate forest, and boreal forest. When we say tropical forest is characterized with high temperature, high relative humidity due to excessive rain, and various plants and animals are present there. Temperate forest is also characterized with a rainfall, but the rainfall is not as much as what you have in the tropical rainforest. It has low temperature, and the trees there are always evergreen. Then the boreal forest is characterized with extremely low temperature. That is, the temperature there is low, and you have moderate rainfall. Now let's look at grassland. Grassland, from the name, it is dominated with grasses. That is a type of terrestrial habitat that is dominated with grasses. It supports varieties or wide diversities of plants and animals. It is divided into tropical grassland and a temperate grassland. That is, you have the tropical grassland, you have temperate grassland. The tropical grassland is also known as savanna, and it is characterized with widely spaced grassy fields. That is, you normally have grasses that are widely, spaced. Then you have average annual rainfall that is usually followed by a dry season. That is, the rainfall there is, is optimum, and this is always followed by the dry season. Then the temperate grassland. The temperate grassland is similar to tropical grassland, but it has a higher temperature, and it is usually, characterized with warm summer. That is, the summer is usually warm, and it's followed by cold winter and average rainfall. Cold winter and average rainfall. That is, the rainfall is not usually very high. The desert is characterized with very low rainfall. That is, most times rain does not normally fall, and the annual rainfall is usually like 10 inches. The temperature there is usually very high, but you also have plants and animals that are adapted to this environment. They have various means by which they are adapted to this type of environment. Like, for example, in the case of plants, most of the plants there, especially those that are trees, they normally have long roots that go right into the land, deep into the land, to in search of water. Then you have mountains. Mountains are large landforms that rise above the surrounding surface. That is, mountains are usually higher than the surrounding. Anytime you have land surface that is higher than the surrounding surface, that landform is described as mountain. It is usually colder, that is, it has colder climate due to high elevation. That's where they got the saying that the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. So because the land is elevated up, if it's cooler, the climate is cooler, so the temperature is lower. So the plants and animals that are present there, they also have a special way of coping with the environment. They have special adaptation. You have some that when the weather is too cold, when the climate is too cold, they withdraw into their shell until when the climate is favorable that they can come out. Now let's look at another topic, that is genetics. When we talk about genetics, genetics is simply the study of inheritance. That is studying something about inheritance. What do we mean by inheritance? Inheritance simply means, inheriting something, getting something from the parents. And that is why we also define genetics as the science of genes and how traits are passed on from one generation to the next. Genes are, those things that are present that helps to pass traits. Traits are characteristics, things or features that are found in parents and are also found in offspring. It is the study of how genes and traits are passed from one generation to the other. It is the function of one is a trait from parents to the offspring. Now we're going to look at the different the basic terms in genetics. The first one we're going to look at here, we're going to look at genes. When we say genes, they are parts of DNA that carry hereditary information from one, or hereditary information passed from one parent or from parent to offspring. Now, you have learned something about the structure of the cell before, especially animal and plant cell. Inside each of the cells, you have nucleus, and inside the nucleus, you have what we call chromosomes, and the chromosomes, you have what we call DNA. So that part of the DNA that is responsible for carrying characteristics, features, or traits from parent to the new individual that is being formed is what we refer to as genes. Then we have another term that is referred to as allele. Allele is different forms of a gene which produce variations in a genetic inherited trait. That is, it is one of alternative forms of the same gene occupying a position on chromosome. The same gene, but in different forms. Like for example, hair, the color of the hair. It could be brown, it could be brown, it could be black, it could be red. Blood is another example. Blood has various forms, and each form is referred to as an allele because it's occupying the same, position. It could be A, that's why you have blood group A. It could be B, it could be O. It's the same thing, the same gene, but manifesting itself in different forms. Then we also have a term that we refer to as dominant. When we talk about dominant is talking about an allele, that is allele of a gene that shows, specific traits over the other. That is in the process of passing, is in the process of passing inheritance or traits to offspring from parents. Some traits normally show very well, and these traits that normally show very well in the offspring are referred to as being dominant. That is, they have dominated, they have covered other traits. And that is why we also have recessive. Recessive gene is the gene that the trait is masked. That is, the gene that's the dominant trait as masked, as covered. That's one. So while we have the dominant allele as a gene that is showing itself, that is being expressed, the recessive gene is the one that is being covered, that is being masked, that is not, showing. Then we also have another term that is referred to as homozygous. Two of the same form of a gene, one from the female and one from the male parent. That is, when you talk about homozygous, homozygous is talking about zygote. So, you know, when zygote is always formed from a donation from a male and another donation from the female. That is, a donation of one form from the male parent and another one from the female parent. And when they form zygote, when this form of gene, when they are the same, we refer to them as homozygous. That is why when we talk about the genetic component of a particular person, if it is a if that genetic component is represented by B, for example, like color of the hair, when we are trying to represent a trait is normally represented by the alphabet of the dominant trait. So if it is B for black now, if black is dominant, we represent it with big B, capital B, and the other color that is that the black is dominant over, maybe light complexion, will be small letter B. So in an homozygous form, the gene we have B, capital letter B and capital letter B. That is two capital letter B's, and these two capital letter B's will produce black color. That is homozygous black. Then the light color will be small letter B, two small letter B's, which will produce light complexion color, and that one will also be homozygous light. But when we have two different forms of a gene, one from male and the other one from the female, they are different, they are not the same, then we refer to that as heterozygote. So if we have for black now, we have capital letter B and small letter b, the color will still be black because capital letter B, the color of that offspring will still be black because capital letter B is dominant. It has the black color is dominant, which is being represented by by capital letter B. It's dominant and it's covering the small letter b, which is lightness. So that will be referred to as heterozygous black. That is, it is different forms of a gene that is there, and that is why we refer to as heterozygous. Then we have what we call genotype. You can see that I've been mentioning capital letter B, small letter b. So the genetic composition, the internal hereditary information that contain the genetic code, that is the genetic information. You cannot see capital letter B, capital letter B, two capital letter B's. You cannot see it outside in a person. Capital letter B, small letter b, you cannot see it in a person. That is why somebody that is having capital letter B and somebody that two capital letter B's and the one that is having capital letter B and small letter b, the two of them are black colored. They can be showing black, but that particular component, the B's that you have there, are being referred to as the genotype. While their outwardly expressed traits or characteristics, black color, is being referred to as the phenotype. So when you have capital letter B, two capital letter B's and one capital letter B, small capital letter b, you have they are two different genotypes, but their phenotype will be black color. And when you have small letter b, two small letter B's showing for or being represented for light complexion, the genotype will be two small letter B's, while the phenotype will be light color. So that's that about phenotype and genotype. Now we also have what we call incomplete dominance. That's the situation in which both the alleles do not display a dominant trait, resulting into or in a combined combination or a midway amid the characteristics of the alleles. That is, when the alleles, both alleles that you have, with capital letter B, small letter b that I've told you, Each of them is an allele. Now, when you now have a situation where each of these, none of them is dominant or showing dominance over the other, it shows that we are not going to have the characteristics of one showing. So it will result into a fine combination or a midway of the characteristics of the alleles. Now, the next one is a codominance. When we talk about codominance, that is when the two alleles, they lack dominance and recessive association, and thus the two affect the creature. So when the two of them, when they lack dominance recessive association, it's going to affect the creature. That is, it's going to affect the organism. And in that case, we refer to that as codominance. The two of them are, are existing as codominant. So the next one we have is a laws of inheritance. Laws of inheritance. When we talk about laws of inheritance were propounded by Mendel. That is Gregory Mendel. Is one of the forefront of frontliners in genetics. Mendel carried out a test or carried out a study on peas, green peas, and Drosophila, tried to find out how characteristics are being passed from one generation to the other, and thereafter he now came up with 3 laws of inheritance. The first law of inheritance, as stated by Mendel, is law of segregation. Law of segregation states that during gamete formation, the alleles for each gene segregate from each other, so that each gamete varies only or carries only one allele for each gene. They normally exist in 2. So what the law of segregation is saying is that during gamete formation, when the formation of gametes wants to occur, the alleles for each gene will segregate. That is, they will separate from each other, so that each one will now be present, so that each gamete carries only one allele. It's going to carry only one allele for each gene. Then you also have law of independent assortment. Law of independent assortment is like a continuation of the explanation of law of segregation. The law of independent assortment says that at the time of gamete or zygote formation, the genes are independently passed on from parents to offspring. That is, when segregation has taken place, the genes are being passed on to parents independently, on their own, not in association with any other gene. Not the genes individually, they are being passed on from parents to offspring. Then the third law, which is law of dominance, that is, law of dominance says that in an heterozygous condition, the allele whose characters are expressed over the other is called dominant allele, and the characters are called dominant characters, while the rarely shown character is called recessive characters. So just like I mentioned earlier about recessive and dominant, what this law is saying, and law of dominance is saying, that in heterozygous condition, there will always be one allele that will show itself or express itself over the other, and it's referred to as dominant allele, while the characters are referred to as dominant characters, while the rarely shown characters are referred to as recessive characters. Thank you so much.